My parents excluded me from the trip that I paid for to take my sister's husband, so I canceled it. This happened a few weeks ago, and I am still dealing with the consequences. I am a 28-year-old, and since I graduated from college, I have been working very hard in my career. I am not a millionaire or anything like that, but I have a good job that allows me to save and give myself some treats. My family does not have the same luck. My parents are retired, and although they have a modest pension, it is not enough for great luxuries. My younger sister, 25 years old, is married to a man I will call Luis. They both live paycheck to paycheck because Luis has never had a stable job and my sister works part-time, since they want to have children soon. My relationship with them has always been complicated. My parents really like Luis because, according to them, he is a kind and family man. To me, he seems like a complete slacker who takes advantage of my sister, but I do not usually say anything because I always end up being the bitter one of the family. A few months ago, after a major promotion at work, I decided to do something special for my family. I planned a 2-week Caribbean cruise as a gift. I wanted us to have an unforgettable experience together. The trip was all-inclusive, luxury cabins, excursions, meals, everything. It was something we had never done before, and although it cost me a good amount of my savings, I thought it was worth it. From the beginning, I made it clear that this was my gift to them. I organized everything. I paid for the cabins, I selected the dates when everyone could go. I even called each one to make sure their documents were in order. I was excited about the idea of sharing something so incredible with them. But everything changed a week before departure. I received a call from my mother while I was at work. I thought it would be to talk about the final details of the trip, but instead, she started with a strange tone, as if she was trying to soften something. "We need to talk about the cruise, honey," she said. I felt a knot in my stomach immediately, but I tried to remain calm. "What is wrong?" "Well, your sister and Luis are very excited, but it turns out there were not enough cabins available for everyone. There is only room for 4 people. So we decided that it would be best if Luis took your place. You understand, right? You are so generous. And you have been on trips before. We thought it would be a very nice gesture on your part to let them go." I remained silent. I literally could not process what I was hearing. I had planned this trip for months, paid every penny out of my own pocket, and now they were telling me that there was simply no room for me. "Wait, are you telling me that I cannot go on the trip that I paid for?" I finally asked. "Well, technically you can, but it would be selfish if you did not let Luis go. He has never had an experience like this, and you know you always have more opportunities. Besides, we thought you might enjoy something quieter at home. You could use that time to relax and recharge." It was like I was in a parallel dimension. I could not believe how casually my mother was excluding me from something that I had organized. I tried to maintain my composure, but my voice came out colder than I expected. "And who decided this exactly? Your father, your sister, and I discussed it, and we thought it was best for the family. We know you always put others first, and, therefore, we thought you would agree." That is when I realized that they had not even considered my opinion. They simply assumed that I would give up my place because, as always, family is everything, right? I hung up the call without saying anything else. I was furious, hurt, and completely incredulous. During the following days, they tried to call me several times, but I did not answer. My sister even sent me messages thanking me for being so mature and understanding how important this was for Luis. That is what broke me. It was not a sincere thank you. It was more like a mockery, as if they were really convinced that my life revolved around them. That is when I started to plan what I would do. And let me tell you something. If they thought they could take advantage of me without consequences, they were very wrong. Update 1. After that surreal call with my mother, I spent the next few days completely paralyzed between anger and sadness. Part of me wanted to yell at them everything I was feeling, but another part told me that it would not do any good. Deep down, I knew that, for them, I was nothing more than the family's reliable resource, the daughter who was always there to solve problems, the older sister who could sacrifice herself without complaining. The time had come to show them that it was not always going to be like that. At first, I simply thought of canceling the trip immediately. But something stopped me. I wanted to understand exactly how they had arrived at this democratic decision to exclude me from something that I myself had paid for. So I started connecting the dots and looking for clues. The first red flag came when I checked the WhatsApp family group. It had been quite inactive during the days leading up to the call, but upon reviewing the history, I noticed something strange. 2 weeks before my mother called me, the group had become mysteriously silent. Before that, everyone was excitedly talking about the details of the trip, what to pack, which excursions to choose, and even how they wanted to decorate the cabins with family photos. Suddenly, that activity stopped completely. That is when I realized that there was an alternative group that I was not a part of. It was not hard to confirm it. My sister, probably carelessly, mentioned in one of her individual messages something like, "Oh, did not you see that in the group? Oh, wait, never mind. Mom will tell you." It was obvious that there was a separate group where they discussed things they did not want me to know. I decided to play along with the situation. I replied very politely to her message, something like, "No, I have not seen anything. What are you planning?" Her reaction was immediate. She changed the subject and said goodbye hurriedly, as if she was afraid to say anything more. This confirmed to me that something was going on behind my back. The straw that broke the camel's back came when a friend of my sister's, who had worked with her in the past and with whom I have a cordial relationship, sent me a message on Instagram. It was completely unexpected, but what she told me left me speechless. Basically, she asked me, "Is it true that you are not going on the cruise because you gave your place to Luis? Your sister is saying that it was your idea and that you wanted to give them that space because they do not have as many opportunities as you." My blood was boiling. How was it possible that they were distorting the story so much? According to this friend, my sister was selling the narrative that I, being the altruistic and generous sister I had always been, voluntarily gave up my place because I wanted Luis to experience something special. She was receiving compliments and comments like, "Your sister is so amazing. I wish I had a family as close as yours." It was as if they were using my supposed sacrifice to feed their ego and appear as the noble victims who simply accepted my generosity. That night, I could not sleep. I knew I could not continue ignoring what was happening. It was obvious that this had not been a spontaneous decision or something that came up by chance. There was something much more calculated behind all of this, and I was determined to find out what it was. So I started to investigate a little more thoroughly. Since I was the one who organized the cruise, I had direct access to the travel agency's online account and all the booking details. Reviewing the dates and payments, I noticed something curious. The original booking included an extra double cabin. That cabin had been canceled barely a week after I made the down payment, which reduced the total to only 4 cabins. It was clear that someone had intervened to change the plans from the beginning. Upon calling the agency to confirm, they told me that the change request had been made by my mother. According to them, she argued that it was not necessary to spend on an extra cabin because one person was considering not attending. Me. They were planning my exclusion from the very beginning. And then everything clicked. From the start, my mother, my sister, and Luis had decided that this was not my trip. They had seen the perfect opportunity to use my generosity as a ticket for their own dream vacation. The worst part of all is that they were not only excluding me, they were making me look like the one responsible for this decision to avoid any blame. At this point, I was no longer hurt, I was furious. But if I learned anything in this whole process, it is that revenge should not be impulsive. So I decided to play along a little longer. I was not going to confront them yet, not until I had everything perfectly planned. Update 2. When I discovered everything they had done behind my back, I knew I could not let them get away with it. Not after all the manipulation, lies, and audacity of excluding me from something I myself had funded. I was not going to yell at them or confront them directly. They were expecting drama. They were expecting me to act like the difficult daughter they can always label as exaggerated. But I would not give them that satisfaction. So I devised a plan, a silent but effective one. The first thing I did was review the contract and the terms of the cruise booking. I wanted to be absolutely sure that I had full control over the decisions. Fortunately, as the person who had paid for everything and made the booking, I had full authority to manage any changes. The terms stipulated that I could cancel the trip up to 48 hours before departure, and, although there would be a penalty, the refund would be significant. Also, I could decide exactly how and where the remaining funds would be transferred. It was perfect. I knew I could not cancel everything immediately. I had to wait for the right time to maximize the impact. In the meantime, I pretended I knew nothing. I replied to some messages from my mother and my sister with short and generic responses, enough for them to believe that I was still accepting their decision. In their minds, I must have been at home, depressed and resigned to my fate. But what they did not know was that every second that passed only gave me more time to perfect my revenge. The day before the cruise departed, my mother called me once again. I thought that maybe she wanted to make sure that everything was under control, or even worse, glowed a little more in her supposed victory. But what she said made me even more convinced that I was doing the right thing. I wanted to thank you, honey, for being so understanding about all of this. We know it was not easy for you, but it is a reminder of how generous and mature you are. When we return, we promise to do something special with you. Maybe a dinner at home. A dinner at home? A dinner at home? That was their great plan to compensate, after literally stealing a luxury vacation from me. It was at that moment that my decision was solidified. That night, just before the deadline to cancel, I called the cruise agency. My heart was racing as I spoke to the representative, but my resolve was unshakable. Hello, I need to cancel a complete booking. The number is redacted. The agent asked me to confirm my details and then explained that there would be a penalty for canceling. He gave me the exact amount that would be refunded, and although it was less than what I had originally paid, I did not care. It was not the money I was really looking for, it was the principle. Perfect. Proceed with the cancellation and transfer the refund to the bank account I will provide. The representative asked me if I was sure, because it was a large booking. I assure you, yes, I replied. I did not reply. I imagined the scene when they arrived at the port, my family happily carrying their suitcases, ready to board the cruise, only to be greeted by confused employees who would inform them that their trip had been canceled. Later that evening, the phone started ringing non-stop. My mother, my sister, even Luis, called me repeatedly. I ignored all the calls. Finally, my mother left a voicemail that sounded on the verge of collapse. What did you do? They told us that the booking was canceled. We were all here, ready to board, and now they tell us there is nothing. Why did you do this? Call me immediately. The rage in her voice was evident, but I was calm. I waited a few hours before answering, so that the chaos would really settle in. When I finally answered, I did so as calmly as possible. What happened? I asked, as if I did not know anything. You know perfectly well what happened. You canceled the cruise. How could you do this to us? We were all here with our suitcases and now we are stranded. I took a breath and replied without a hint of remorse. Yes, I canceled it. After all, why should I pay for a vacation where I am not welcome? If Luis needed my place so badly, I thought the most logical thing was that he did not need my money either. There was a deadly silence on the other end of the line before my mother started yelling. She accused me of being selfish, immature, of ruining the family experience. My sister took the phone at some point and started crying, saying that I had humiliated the whole family and that she would never forgive me. But the best part was when I heard Luis' voice in the background, complaining that someone should pay him for the days of work he lost. I almost laughed out loud. Days of work? That man did not even have a steady job. I hung up the call before they could continue. I did not owe them any explanations or apologies. They had already made it clear how little they valued my effort, my time, and my money. Now they were just facing the consequences of their own greed and manipulation. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on my sofa, and enjoyed the silence. I knew this was just the beginning of the drama, but I did not care. For the first time in a long time, I felt that I was in control, and I was not willing to give it up. Update 3. I was not prepared for the level of chaos that my decision would unleash, although I should have anticipated it. The cancellation of the cruise not only left my family stranded at the port, it also generated an avalanche of calls, messages, and, of course, the public drama they love so much. That night, after hanging up on my mother, my phone continued to vibrate for hours. My sister alternated between sending me crying audios and text messages in which she insulted me relentlessly. Luis also tried to contact me, but I obviously ignored him. The real show began the next day, when details of the disaster began to leak out to the rest of the extended family and close acquaintances. I do not know exactly who started telling the story, but it was not long before I started receiving messages from other relatives, most of them trying to understand my side of the situation. Your mom is very upset. She told me it was a misunderstanding. Why did not you talk to them before canceling? Your sister is saying that you acted out of jealousy because she is in a relationship and you are not. Is that true? We understand that you are hurt, but do not you think this was a bit extreme? After all, they are your family. It was clear that my sister and my mother were controlling the narrative, as they always did. According to them, I had canceled the cruise on a childish whim because I could not stand to share. There was also a version circulating that it had all been a misunderstanding and that I had misinterpreted their intentions. What infuriated me was not only that they were blatantly lying, but that, once again, they were trying to paint me as the villain. I decided not to reply to any of those messages. There was no point in trying to defend myself to people who had already chosen a side. But not everyone believed their version of the story. There were a couple of cousins and an uncle, with whom I have always had a close relationship, who wrote to me directly to ask me what had happened. I told them everything in detail, how they had changed the booking to exclude me, how they had lied to me saying there was no room for me, and how my sister was using my supposed sacrifice to look like a heroine. I also explained to them that the decision to cancel was not impulsive, but a direct response to their manipulation. My cousins were outraged. One of them, in particular, told me something that really helped me feel validated. I knew something did not add up. Your sister has always been manipulative, but this is another level. You did well to defend yourself. They only see you as an ATM. That phrase, although harsh, gave me a clarity I needed. For years, I had allowed my family to take advantage of me because I felt obligated to do so. I had believed that my value within the family dynamic depended on what I could provide them, whether it was money, time, or personal sacrifices. This was the first step to breaking that cycle. Meanwhile, my mother and my sister did not give up. Apparently, after being stranded at the port, they had to return home with their bags packed and humiliation written all over their faces. My sister tried to organize some damage control by posting an old family photo on her social media with a caption that said something like, "Sometimes things do not go as planned, but family is always everything." The irony almost made me spit out the coffee I was drinking when I saw it. Family is always everything. Sure, as long as that means using me as a means to get what they want. The real blow came a few days later when my mother called me again. This time, trying to sound reasonable. "Listen, all this drama is over. We want you to come to dinner this weekend to talk. It is not good that we are fighting. We are family." There was that word again, family. They always brought it up when they wanted me to ignore what they had done. "I do not think that is a good idea, Mom," I replied calmly. "You made decisions without consulting me and expected me to accept everything without question. I do not see what there is to talk about. But enough with this childish behavior," she suddenly yelled. "You ruined our vacation and made us look like fools in front of everyone. Do not you think that is enough?" "Enough for whom?" "Because I would say that enough was what you did by planning to exclude me and then lying about it." I did not wait for her answer. I hung up before she could continue with her speech. That weekend, as expected, I became the main topic of conversation at the family dinner. My cousins sent me messages telling me that my mother and sister spent the whole night complaining about me, painting me as selfish and ungrateful. But what really surprised me was that several people began to question them directly. Apparently, my uncle, the same one who knew the truth, had decided to put them in their place. "If you were so bothered by what happened, why did not you use your own money to pay for another cruise? Or why did not you ask Luis to pay his share? Why did everything have to fall on her?" According to what they told me, my mother was speechless and my sister tried to deflect the issue by saying that it was not that simple. But the damage was already done. Other relatives began to murmur among themselves, wondering if what they had tried to do to me was really fair. That was the first time I felt that things were turning in my favor. It was no longer just me defending myself. Others were beginning to see my family as they really were. Update 4. A week after the disaster at the port, my mother tried a different approach. She called me in a much more conciliatory tone, almost as if she was really trying to fix things. "I have been doing a lot of thinking, honey," she began. "Maybe we handled things wrong. It was not our intention to make you feel excluded, really. We are sorry that all of this got out of control." For a moment, I was almost convinced. Her tone was so different from usual that I wondered if she had really understood the damage they had caused me. But then she continued, "Why do not you come home this weekend? We can make a special meal. We talked to your sister and Luis, and everyone agrees that we should put this behind us. Also, we have something we want to propose to you." That last sentence set off all my alarms. It was not a sincere invitation. It was another attempt at manipulation. The way she said, "We have something we want to propose to you," made it clear to me that, once again, They were expecting something from me. What kind of proposal? I asked directly, letting my tone reflect my skepticism. Oh, nothing complicated. We just want to see if we can reorganize a trip for everyone. It would be a way to fix things, do not you think? We could split the expenses this time, but we would need your help with the planning, since you are so good at those things. There it was. They wanted me to organize another trip, possibly even pay for most of it, but this time with the illusion that it would be a family effort. I do not think that is a good idea, Mom, I replied firmly. I already tried to organize something for everyone, and look how it turned out. I am not interested in repeating the experience. My mother sighed, visibly frustrated. You are acting so resentful, you know? I do not understand why you cannot just put this behind us. We all make mistakes. The problem is not the mistake, I replied. It is that you did it on purpose, with no respect for me, and then tried to justify it with lies. I am not going to put myself in the same position again. Her tone immediately changed. Well, if you continue with that attitude, I do not know what else we can do. We just wanted to fix things. If you prefer to remain separated from your family, that will be your decision. I hung up without saying another word. I was not going to allow her to emotionally manipulate me again. What hurt me the most was not their attempt to convince me, but the total lack of genuine remorse. It was not an apology, it was a strategic move for me to become their source of resources and organization again. After that call, I realized something important. It was not just about the cruise or the money, it was about how my family saw me, how they assumed that my role was always to be the one who fixed everything, the one who sacrificed her well-being for others. That dynamic was deeply rooted, and it was not going to change with a meal or a fake apology. Final update. It has been 3 months since I last wrote here, and I must admit that many things have changed. After weeks of tension, accusations, and ignored calls, I finally achieved what seemed impossible, fixing things with my family. It all started with a meeting at my mother's house. It was my sister's idea. She called me and told me that she was tired of the estrangement. I was surprised at how genuine she sounded, so I agreed to go, although with low expectations. During the meeting, everyone made an effort. My mother apologized for not handling things correctly, and my sister admitted that she had been selfish in taking my place on the cruise. Even Luis, my brother-in-law, apologized for his part in the whole mess, although he barely looked me in the eye while speaking. At that moment, I decided to let it go. Not because I really felt that they had changed, but because I needed peace. It was a tacit agreement. I would not talk about the cruise again, and they would not try to use me in the same way again. So, little by little, things returned to a kind of normalcy. However, what I never expected was what happened next. It all started innocently. Luis and I occasionally crossed paths at family gatherings, and although we had never had a particularly close relationship, I began to notice a change in his behavior. He was kinder to me, more attentive. If he ever seemed uncomfortable with me, that disappeared. In fact, he began to look for opportunities to talk to me, whether about trivial matters or more personal things. In one of those conversations, while we were in my mother's kitchen during a family meal, he confessed that the cruise incident had opened his eyes about many things. He said he had realized how controlling my sister could be and how that made him feel trapped. Sometimes I feel like I am just an accessory to her, he told me with a sincerity that took me by surprise. I did not know what to answer. I felt uncomfortable, but also flattered that he trusted me to share something so personal. From that moment on, our conversations became more frequent and, although I did not want to admit it at the time, more intense. Everything changed a month ago. Luis showed up at my door one night, visibly nervous. He said he needed to talk to me, that he could not keep what he felt to himself any longer. Before I could stop him, he confessed that he had developed feelings for me. It was a surreal moment. I knew it was wrong. I knew this crossed all the lines, but I could not help but feel attracted to him. There was something in the way he looked at me, something I had never felt before. That night changed everything. We kissed, and although at first I tried to stop it, I ended up giving in. Since then, we have been seeing each other secretly. We meet when we know my sister is busy or when he can make up an excuse to go out. I know it is wrong. I know this is a betrayal on many levels, but there is something about our connection that feels so inevitable. Luis says he cannot continue with my sister, that he is considering leaving her. But we both know that it is not that simple. There are too many things at stake. His marriage, our family, the chaos that this would unleash if anyone found out. Sometimes, when we are together, I try to imagine what it would be like if everything were different, if we did not have to hide. But reality always hits me. For now, we continue as we are, trapped in this strange limbo. I do not know how much longer we can keep it a secret, but I also do not know if I want to stop it. All this is a mess, I know, but I cannot help it. If anything relevant happens, maybe I will come back here to update. But for now, I think this story ends here.